You're falling in proxy. You're falling in. Don't worry, folks. I'm Asian, so I can make that joke. Welcome, ZZ Proxies, to the Dialyn Early Access video, and let's immediately start off with the brave statement that Dialyn is our best stunner to date. Folks, this is no exaggeration that Dialyn is arriving to the cast of already amazing spread of stunner characters and is just spreading them wide open. Pushing her way all the way to the top. Let's talk about why she's so damn strong. Dialyn is our first premium physical stunner, and in the wake of the new Void Hunter, who's now dripped to also be physical enhanced, this does not seem like a coincidence. Dialyn is an amalgamation of previous stunner characters, much like how Jushoea brought together some older elements of characters and also brought in the new extended decibel bank, whereby characters could store up to 4,000 decibels. Dialyn 2 brings some best bonuses from older stun characters into a very cohesive kit, yet brings in a new gimmick element that we haven't seen before. In my opinion, it's okay to have a character just be an amalgamation of other previous ones, yet perform at a much higher level. The most prominent character that we've seen do this went by the name of Kaedehara Kazuha, and at first impressions, he wasn't too well received by the community because he essentially was labeled a copycat. Now, Dialyn's kit and animations are very much different from the rest. However, much of what she provides is quite rooted in classical stun contributions. Let's get under the hood and see whether or not she is really worth your pulls. And don't forget that this information is coming from the early access server, and info is subject to change. Let's rip the band-aid off, because Dialyn has one of the most text in the game to date. In particular, with her core, what the is this encyclopedia of a core skill? Let's put this thing into the context of her main stacking mechanics, the 5-star service hotline. Dialyn will accumulate reviews from the usages of her abilities and gain her allies buffs, and even a new effect, which we'll go through later. And enemies will receive a status called the malicious complaint, thereby which applies her debuff. When you enter battle, Dialyn will increase her impact based on the amount of crit rate you have that goes past 50% by 2 points for every 1 percentage point, up to a max of 100 impact. Meaning if you can get to 100 crit rate, then you'll end up with an extra 100 extra impact. In all honesty, this really isn't worth the chase, as most of y'all know, stunning is subject to a results-based analysis. Whether or not your stun character helps you to get 2, 3, or 4 stun windows. If you somehow find yourself over-stunning, we'll need to tune back on the impact and actually focus on other parts of her kit, which we'll go through during the skills portion in a bit. Back to the core ability, her EX special will transform into 3 different attacks. First rock, then scissors, then paper. Just get it because there's an exclamation point there. When paper hits an enemy, they are inflicted with the malicious complaint stack, as mentioned earlier, and will apply 2 debuffs. The first is a 2-second extension of the stun window and a 30% increased stun damage multiplier. Note that we can only trigger the malicious status on an enemy once per stun window, and when the enemy recovers, they will end the effect for you to reapply again. So that's the debuff. What about the review stacks you were talking about earlier, Josh? Well, let's get into that right now. Dialyn can build up this bar here with positive reviews. Every passing second, she'll automatically gain 0.6 positive reviews, up to a max of 120 total stacks with the bar. The heavy portions of the attacks of the EX specials, rock, scissors, and paper will all allow Dialyn to gain 7.5 reviews. So with the 3 chained EX special, you should be getting 22.5 positive reviews. And how does one gain 0.5 of a positive review? You're probably just gonna have to ask Dialyn herself. Then with at least 90 review stacks, when Dialyn triggers the chain attack window with any of these skills, her own chain, EX special Get Lost, which is an EX special skill but uses the charge basic input to activate. A bit weird, but we'll roll with it. Or a quick assist. The next character to follow up with their chain attack can actually convert said chain and upgrade it into their own ultimate attack. And when Dialyn activates this, she will consume 60 of those minimum 90 points of review stacks. Then let's say if you want to have more control over when you push into the stun window, if you do not start the stun window with Dialyn in the above 3 ways, you can force the chain via Dialyn's EX special and consume all 90 points to force the trigger stun window condition and convert the next character's chain into ult. And to end the happening, after all is said and done and Dialyn activates this core passive, she will gain 1 customer complaint. Only 1 can be held at a time, and this 3rd stack mechanic allows Dialyn to back assist into the previous character, a utility for drive disc passives like the Astro Voice. For the most part, the whole shtick with Dialyn is a very big resource management game, and her gameplay in and of itself isn't that difficult, especially when it comes to her EX specials when you just tap E 3 times and you can do rock, paper, scissors. However, talking about the EX specials, note that these attacks are the only ones that will provide you with positive review stacks. This means that you'll need to be very economical with how you utilize your EX specials and gain energy regen via other means such as her WEngine and potentially drives. But it shouldn't be too big of a deal if you don't have her premium options. And the last major part of Dialyn's kit is her additional core ability called the External Eye, which basically is a whole core ability in and of itself. Come on, Hoyo. But this passive can be achieved via parting with an attack or rupture. This just makes too much sense, as we know stunners generally tend to only work with attackers or ruptures nowadays. This will increase Dialyn's EX special damage by 50% crit damage. Then when an EX special or ult is activated, all team members gain the overwhelmingly positive effect. This increases the team-wide damage by a 40%! Holy cow! But this effect does have a weird uptime condition. When under 35 seconds, any refresh of this only extends the buff by 10 seconds. So essentially, you'll either want to ensure that this buff runs out by paying attention to the buff icon in the upper left-hand corner, or making sure to activate an EX special right as the rainbow chain starts, and then during the gray portion of the stun window. Then when the heavy portions of the rock, scissors, and paper attacks contact an enemy, additional damage is dealt based on the unit that was previously on field. If it was an attacker, then your damage increases by 320% of the agent's attack, and if they were rupture, increases by 400% of their sheer force. This means that the stronger the character and their buffing support, the stronger the converted additional damage is going to be. Although this somewhat seems trivial, the additional damage over the course of a fight can actually add up to hundreds if not thousands of points of score if you have a high investment team. This directly pushes the agenda of using premium supports to pair with your DPS, such as Jshoea, Jshoea, and of course Lucia with their respective classes. Unfortunately, you can't have two supports at the same time to make Dialyn the main DPS because you won't be able to activate the additional core passive. Before we move on to the build, let's just have a small showcase of the skills themselves, as I'm sure that you'd like to see the other parts of her kit. The skills you will not be using are the dodges and regular specials. You will sparingly use the full 4 basic combo, yet the 4th basic attack can be jumped to after the chains or ults. Just input the basic, then flow off to your next character. And also the assists, which can be followed up by said basic. These are your core attacks alongside the chains and ults that you'll be utilizing during your fights. And as far as the kit breakdown, that pretty much wraps it up, as she doesn't have too many complicated lines to follow. Well, until someone finds some crazy text to do with her review stacks for chain setups. Then this moves us straight to the build portion. And here's where Dialyn will start to feel a bit different in terms of the construction aspect. Let's start by factoring in Dialyn's core crit passive that grants you 2 points of impact for every 1% of crit rate over 50 points. This is quite strong, yet funnily enough contradicts with the 50% threshold of the best stunner drive disc as of the current day, the king of the summit. For review, this drive provides a total of 30% crit damage for the team if we were to have our crit at least 50% or above. Usually for more conventional stunners outside of trigger, of course, most of them will build just to the 50% threshold and then make sure they have as much attack or impact as possible. Yet for Dialyn, you might be tempted to go all the way into 100% crit rate, which to be honest isn't the worst idea, but after some trials I've dumbed down that you realistically only need around 60 to even 85% crit rate in order to comp for the average initial impact that you'll need for most stages. Of course, this has to be tested across more bosses, especially ones that require a bit more days to stun, yet Dialyn not having the most days to her kit is not a bad thing. And in fact, she just has the right amount, yet can utilize the crit investment to allow her to kick and flip with some oomph. Talking about the kicks, let's start with her WEngine and what they can provide for her. Like I mentioned before, we want crit rate for the core passive and even some energy because the EX special is the only way to actively gain review stacks. And we don't have to look too far to see that Dialyn's WEngine provides just those things. Yesterday's Call is a 713 base attack WEngine with an advanced stat of 24% crit rate, and in the passive, while off-field, we gain 1.5 energy per second. Now, where have I heard a similar sounding WEngine before? Then when the equipped character deals physical damage with an EX special, the days increases by 9% for 10 seconds, stacking up to 3 times, which aligns up with rock, scissors, and paper, which after will allow you to grant all squad members an additional 30% crit damage for a whopping 40 seconds. And unfortunately, only one instance of this passive can be active at a time, so assuming Poker could pop this as well, I guess we'll never know. Then rolling up to the other alternative WEngines, of course, the second best WEngine that we have access to here is the Hellfire's gear, which has a very similar format passive with the focus more purely on impact itself, rather than the crit which redirects back to impact and also contributes to the King of the Summit disc. This WEngine actually can be very competitive with the days, yet understandably falls very short when comparing the tailored bonuses to the signature. Still, if you just need something to get by that gets your Dialyn to contribute 3+ stuns and most of her bonuses, save your $100 and just borrow another Hellfire's gear. Yet the calcs can only go so far. What's not directly factored in is how much the signature versus the budget option allows for your offensive contributions. See, here with the build that still comps for the average amount of impact and crit rate, you get drastically lower crit damage. Whereas with the Sig build, you can go well over 150% crit damage and leaning on a buffer like Jshoea to provide more team damage bonuses and the massive 1200 attack bonus, you can see how Dialyn can almost turn into a sub DPS at this point. But more internal calcs will be done during our full guide breakdown, but for now, I leave you with these two main options. Then to wrap it up, let's head over to the drive discs. And to be honest, it's mainly about the King and the Summit. The 4 set is just the best offered right now for complete team contribution, and either rotating into crit damage or attack if you have your crit rate covered in the substats, or even energy regen if you're running a weapon option that doesn't provide it, will do just fine. I would be hesitant to suggest impact at this point just because with Dialyn, her other aspects of her kit can provide enough days contributions that you'd rather just focus on crit investment over impact 2 with the Shock Star. So that's more of a less prioritized option unless you have some god rolls in the back. Main stats, starting with the 4 slot, will be crit rate until you reach your thresholds, then rotating to crit damage for the premium pullers out there. Slot 5 will be physical damage bonus, followed by attack, and yes, actually even pen here. Then slot 6 will be impact, no doubt. And unfortunately, I'm a bit behind on work and haven't gotten all the infographics just ready yet, but please make sure to join our community Discord as we have a bunch of ZZ gamers over there and all my resources ranging from the character guides, the farming guides, as well as character team suggestions for endgame content. So stay up to date with us there and even on our live streams over at twitch.tv/Jshoea. There we host a bunch of Q&As, account reviews, collabs, events, podcasts, and our new VOD review series. You can't miss it, folks. Make sure to follow us over on Twitch. And now to talk about teams and team comps. Because as mentioned before, why Dialyn is so impactful is that she is literally an overall team DPS increase across the board for pretty much every single DPS character in the game. Because her kit is rooted in granting so many small bonuses here and there, the only character she doesn't trump in potency or buff is Lighter with this massive 75% elemental damage bonus. But haha, funny enough, we'll see soon that even pairing these two together with some offensive characters will actually lead to great success. First, let's start a bit modern. With the Rupture cast, Dialyn works well within the context of both Rupture and Attack because the bonuses she grants can be utilized by both. With Yi-Shen, Dialyn is able to maximize the Grandmaster's stun window by altering the chain to become an ultimate. With the most conventional Yi-Shen quick chain prompt stun start, you can use an EX special and technique ult to grant her an automatic 2 stacks of Yunko Tails and start the first chain with Dialyn. Then, because you should have enough review stacks to convert, you should be able to EX and your follow-up Yi-Shen chain should turn into an ult, dealing much more damage than a chain could. Then just flow into the rest of Yi-Shen's stun window with her ultimate, then round it out with 2 EX Cloud Shavers. I'll be getting more specific data in the upcoming full guide breakdowns to Dialyn, so make sure to subscribe to see her real potential get shown. But across the board, from Yi-Shen to Yidhari and Monato, I've seen strong DPS increases because of the bonuses straight up. The actual stun windows themselves are matched with the other stunner candidates, and in the macro of it all, that again is what a stunner should be providing, and then go from there. Dialyn can essentially provide the same number of stun windows, but allow the team to deal more damage. It's absolutely bonkers and why statistically, she is just the best stunner on paper. And let's not forget about the attacker units. Highlighted here are top units like Evelynn, Sambi, Orphean C Duo, Ellen Joe, and yes, even Hugo Vlad comes back into the picture, as with the new premium double stun comp of himself, Lighter, and Dialyn, these two stunners provide all the offensive buffs Hugo needs and the stun timer extension to gain maximum damage potential. It's absolutely insanity. And don't forget, the conversion of the chain to ult for 2 Hugo chain allows you to essentially confirm an ult every single stun window, and overall will increase the run's potential damage, as you should be able to flow into 2 or 3 more stun windows, depending on the fight. And before we reach our overview on the grades of certain characters and specific highlights, we definitely need to still mention that even though I've talked about top-end characters, folks like Nekomata, Soldier, Korin, Haramasa, and Jshoea can all benefit somehow with the extra ult and much-needed extra DPS bonuses their previous best paired stunner agents just couldn't provide. Dialyn literally just makes most of the offensive class of attackers and ruptures just flat out better. But one thing to note is that Dialyn gets dialed up by the supports invested into the team comp. As mentioned before, Dialyn has the potential to become an offensive contributor even just at the M0W1 level. This means that having a character like Astra, Jshoea, or even Orphe can drastically change up the damage contributions of the Krampus customer service rep. So consider utilizing your best supports alongside with her to buff almost any attack or rupture agent into relevancy. Yet here's the question I'd like to pose as we wrap up the conversations during the video. Does being such a potent force bring a potential bad omen to the game? A character in the support role this good, this flexible, this impactful? Well, personally, no. I think that we've been needing to see an evolution of the stunner class, and characters like Jufufu bringing her extra decibel battery storage, and now Dialyn with her ore conversion gimmick is quite healthy for the game and brings about a whole new way to see interactions with 2 out of our 3 offensive characters, barring the anomalies. And to put things into perspective, shout out the good friend and calc whiz genius Muzzy for helping me to provide some contextual numbers. The damage increase with Dialyn across some of the more meta teams is that in the 5 to 10% range, which for a stunner is quite well balanced, as much as I've been glazing her this entire video. The fact that she can feel this good, pause, and improve that many teams and fit into the ecosystem of the current stunners is just amazing to see, especially for those who have felt like they've had a lack of stunners available to them, specifically because we've only had Jufufu run in 2.0 and Trigger in 2.2. Whereas the other slots are generally taken up by more highlight supports like the big 3 or a slew of offensive agents. Stunners are the second least frequented class behind the ever so forgotten defense class, which, funny enough, Zhao is coming in 2.5 as an ice defense unit, potentially taking the slot of Lucia to have the GOAT support elsewhere. But I'll leave that convo for another time. Before we go, let's wrap up Dialyn's Mindscapes, and they are quite simple. M1 grants an increased review accumulation and 50% all attribute res ignore. M2 is a 20% increase to the stun damage multiplier of the complaint debuff, and a total 15% damage increase to targets with said debuff. This one is just a real number pusher. M3 and M5 are skill increases, which again for stunners allows them to daze stronger. M4 is the first of a 2-part Mindscape pair with the M6 that allows Dialyn to really become a sub-DPS character by granting her 500 points of attack when you have the overwhelmingly positive status tied to the additional core passive. And M6 grants your team a passive effect called Aftertone that can be obtained by other teammates using their ultimates through Dialyn's core passive. This will allow Dialyn to launch a flurry of additional physical damage attacks equal to 480% of her attack up to 12 instances or 12 hits. And gaining Aftertone will then refresh the counter. Yet, after all those extra doodads and doohickeys, really, they don't do too much to push the needle for me. So when it comes to investment levels, I even stick to just M0 and Hellfire's gear, but if you do have the funds and reserves to grab M0W1 and still have a good amount for Banyue or, God forbid, my wife, Ye Shunguang, then you will be rewarded in investing in the arguable best stunner to date. If you have any more questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments below, as I'll be trying to address those questions as well as round out the more fuller guide when Dialyn drops in 2.4. But until then, hope for now you have a much better picture of what Dialyn can contribute, what makes her special, and whether or not you should pick up this big short stack. It's your boy Josh, and hey, did you guys know that we're almost hitting 30,000 subscribers here on YouTube? Once we hit 30K by the end of this year, I really want to host a humongous community event and giveaway for you guys to be able to realize my content creation dream and create an amazing community of you guys. This dream wouldn't be possible without you. So if you've been seeing these videos and haven't subscribed, please just press the red button. It's free. And if you've already checked and you are subscribed, you get a big ol' thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the drop of Dialyn.